Good evening, America, and welcome to the Friday edition. Yes, we made it to Friday of a crazy busy week of course, the Just the News No Noise television show. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from Washington, D.C. at the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. Hey guys, there's a special offer we're doing to try to help Leah Thomas out. Wired to Fish Coffee right now. If you buy a certain amount of coffee, you'll get an autographed book from me. It's my book I wrote on the Clinton and Hunter Biden scandals in Russia and Ukraine. It's an incredible book. You'll get it autographed. You'll get a 1-year subscription to Just the News and a whole lot of Wired to Fish Coffee. Go check it out today. Wired, the number 2 fishcoffee.com, and be sure to use the promo code Just News because you get 10% off, or you can just hit your camera with that QR code and you will be up and running. All right. Just a few minutes ago, before we walked into the studio here, Supreme Court handed Donald Trump another victory. It rolled a 5-4. Donald Trump did have the right to cancel $65 million worth of DEI teaching grants that the Education Department had stopped. Why? Because they violate the DEI executive order that President Trump ordered at the beginning of his presidency. It's a big win, but always a troubling sign. John Roberts switched one more time and went back to the liberal side on this one. He's confounding a lot of conservatives right now. We'll have to keep an eye on that. All right, meanwhile, yeah, there was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of squelching again on Wall Street. The Dow went down about 2,200 points, I think, last time I checked. But it's going to happen for a few more days, right? And I think the truth of the matter is, as Peter Navarro told us last night, President Trump's in for the long game. He's not going to react when brokers panic. He's going to play the long game to start getting tariffs to come into the United States and build up the United States Treasury to pay down the debt. But, in the meantime, there is some progress even in the midst of tariffs. Vietnam, Israel, several countries. I think even today I heard a couple of Latin American countries ready to make a deal. Canada starting to sound more and more like it will make a deal. China, well, not so much in the deal-making mode. They decided today to impose 34% more tariffs on top of the tariffs they already charge on American products coming into the country. So we'll see how that plays for China long term. A couple other things I'd like to get to in the news today. We expected tomorrow President Trump to announce the new owner of TikTok, or at least the person who hopes to own TikTok and buy it from China. But today the president kicked that can down the road another 75 days, which gives several more competitors time to make their case to the White House. Also gives more time for the president to negotiate with China. You got China tariffs, China TikTok, a lot of thorny issues going on with Beijing. We'll have all that covered all weekend long, by the way, on justthenews.com or on the Just the News app that you can get from the Android and Apple stores. All right. With all of that news, I'm going to turn to my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. She was on top of things all day. I was out looking at buildings for new TV studios. She was actually checking the news and staying on top of it. Amanda, what's on your radar today?
Indeed, yes. I'm going to take that economic baton from you and run with it. A lot of economic news to get to, and including the tariffs, but also jobs numbers. And as you said, the markets took a tumble for the second consecutive day, but the Trump administration ended up getting some good news on the jobs front with the Labor Department report that the U.S. economy added 228,000 jobs in March, which nearly doubled expectations, and that comes after the economy added 151,000 jobs in February. However, the unemployment rate did grow to 4.2%, but still the news signifies that for at least the moment, job growth in the country is stable. And in some more tariff news, let's take a look at our friends north of the border, Canada, and their new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, because he has been banging the drum for Canadians to avoid buying American products after President Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods. And the Prime Minister is making waves today because of this answer when asked if he buys American strawberries in a French language interview. Watch.
Produits américains. Est-ce que vous achetez des fraises des États-Unis? Vous envoyez fraises des États-Unis? Hein?
OK. Je dois vous donner une réponse bizarre, dans un sens bizarre, parce que étant Premier ministre, je n'achète plus des fraises et tout cela. Quelqu'un le fait.
I do believe there's a parable, something about a plank and a splinter. Anyway, if you didn't catch that, the Prime Minister said that he doesn't know if he buys American strawberries because he has someone else buy them for him.
What a man of the people.
Oh, not the best answer when you are looking to galvanize your countrymen against American products. And I have one more interesting story to get to before we introduce our first guest tonight. We all know Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has faced some tough times in recent weeks, but they are looking to get tougher because he is facing a lot more internal backlash from the Democrat Party. A new poll shows that in a hypothetical matchup between Schumer and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for Senate, reveals that AOC would beat him. That is according to left-leaning think tank and polling firm Data for Progress. Their poll showed that 55% of likely Democrat voters would back Ocasio-Cortez, while only 36% favored Schumer. How is that for some news going into the weekend, John?
Yeah, not good news for Chuck Schumer, although that group does lean a little bit to the far left, so you don't know how their polling science is. Again, we like to rely on pollsters like the great Scott Rasmussen and people like that, or Rich Bear, or some people like that. All right. We are very lucky to kick our show off tonight from the great state of Arizona. One of our favorite guests, Congressman Andy Biggs, and now candidate for governor. He's also the host of one of my favorite podcasts, What's the Biggs Idea? What's the Biggs Idea? I wish I had that name. It's such a good podcast. I'm so jealous. All right, Congressman, welcome back to the show. Happy Friday.
Hey, thank you. Good to see you, Amanda. Good to see you, John.
Yeah, good to have you on, sir. Let's start off with the big news dominating the economic markets in Washington. President Trump's tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs. A lot of people panic in the short term, but the long-term strategy here has big dividends for the United States, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I view this as an institutional response to a new approach. I mean, but when you look at it, what did you see? You're seeing growth in consumer confidence. You're seeing the actual oil and gas present and futures going down, which will stimulate the economy as well. And don't forget, incredible labor data coming out today. And actually, even the Department of Labor statistics, in my opinion, they kind of underestimate it, because when you look at the Census Bureau, they have about an additional 130,000 jobs. And the job growth number was almost, just in the Labor Department, was 130,000 more than they expected. So you're seeing an uptick in the economy. You're seeing promises and to build the economy back up. I think it's a short-term panic, long-term prosperity ahead.
Well, you know, so many people, when they are speaking on economic platforms, they talk about taking middle America and broadening that, building the economy from the middle out. And when you take the tariff scenario, these tariffs aren't meant to benefit people who are major stockholders on Wall Street. It is meant to benefit the middle class by bringing jobs back. As you said, 228,000 jobs this month, and many of them are in the manufacturing sector. So it seems to me that all of this is kind of a congruent effort to broaden out the middle class and bring people from the bottom up.
Oh, Amanda, I think you're 100% right, and that's going to be the long-term result too. You're going to see the middle class is going to get benefits. And speaking of the benefits coming to the middle class, I think part of the reason that the stock market is showing disapprobation is because Congress has failed to deliver so far on the extension of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that we've promised to do. And when that gets in, and you also kick in hopefully something like President Trump's no tax under $150,000, man, the middle class is going to be in good shape. So will be the disadvantaged lower class, lower quartile, and everybody's going to have a chance to actually get. My opinion, everyone's going to get a chance to participate in the economic growth that's going to be coming.
Yeah, really remarkable. This is an issue that's been really interesting, Congressman, because there are people on the right, Tom Sowell, and a lot of the free trade advocates of the past that are criticizing the president. Then you've got unions and even some Democratic voters leaning in and say, we love what President Trump's doing. This is an issue that isn't a straight party line issue. When the money starts coming in and when people start to see tens of billions of dollars a week coming in new tariff money, does that start to change the equation even of the elitists on Wall Street?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, look, those Ricardians who are absolute total free marketeers, I get it. I used to be one. But here's what I learned very quickly as I grew up. Free trade only works if everybody's following the rules, if everybody's going fairly. And you never got fair trade. And so that's when Trump starts saying we've been disadvantaged all this time, he's right. Everybody's been a free rider on our significant economic growth. And so when you start seeing everybody start moving to a free, kind of a fair trade, you're going to see more of a free trade, and everybody, are kind of our Milton Friedman type guys, the David Ricardo type, they're going to say, look, we're all better off with the current plan. And I believe that's going to be the case for sure.
Yeah. Another huge part of President Trump's campaign was securing the border. And fortunately, it seems like the instances of Laken Riley and stories like that have decreased in speed, but it is still happening. Nate Baker, a Virginia native driving a motorcycle who was struck by, again, an illegal alien who I believe was first arrested back in 2016. He's here in this country illegally. These stories are still happening.
South Carolina student last night.
And the South Carolina student, yeah. I mean, these stories continue to happen because there's such a backlog of illegal immigrants here, and obviously they're not the only ones who commit crimes. But how can Congress help this process speed up for Tom Homan and President Trump and give them the support they need?
Get them the money they need. That's really what we need to do. And they want about $150 billion, more or less, for a 10-year plan. And we need to get them the resources, because my guess is they're going to need, over the next 18 months, somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 billion. And that would allow them to get the personnel they need, get them trained. That would allow them to detain like they need. That would allow them to have the equipment that they need. And Tom Homan needs to have people to be able to go in and take care of what you say, I mean, which is the backlog, which is initially going to be somewhere around the 4 million people that are just ready to go now, who already have orders, et cetera. But when you start looking at the overall picture, Amanda and John, we're talking tens of millions of people who are here illegally. And like the guy who killed the person the other night, who'd been here since 2016, if that person was never here, that death never takes place. And Homan is we're busting at the seams detention, but we got to get these people out of here, and so Congress needs to get these resources immediately to them, and then we can talk about some policy would be helpful as well.
You're also on the front lines of another very important date. Someone that's stopping the president from doing that. Judges who aren't letting him deport people under the Alien Enemies Act, and others, people like Judge Boasberg. You introduced a novel thing this week. It's getting a lot of attention. You don't have to impeach a judge. You can just declare that he is no longer in good behavior and remove him under the standards of the Constitution. What's been the reaction to your colleagues to that? And what are some of the other things floating around Congress that might get done in the next few weeks when it comes to judicial reform?
So my colleagues, many of them are really enthusiastic about it. They do have a few concerns, and we can get into where they view the concerns, but I'm not overly concerned. I don't share some of those concerns, because I do think this is, when you look historically, this is kind of what the founders intended. They viewed judicial branch as the weakest branch, but it so far has emerged as this kind of deistic type of black-robed autocracy. And so we really have got to make sure that they don't abuse their power and authority. And that's one way. That's why my approach, Article 3, Section 1, remove them for bad behavior. But the other things that we're going to do that I think have traction, we tried to get this done last week in the House, and that is to limit jurisdiction. Again, Article 3, Section 1, we create the jurisdiction, we create the lower courts, so we also have the authority to limit jurisdiction as well. Even the courts agree with that. So we want to take away nationwide injunctions, limit it to the litigants that are people or the parties before that judge, and then you don't extend out. That's what we tried to get through last week. I think we're going to get through this coming week. And then it's, again, resources. We have to, where some of them need to be defunded, maybe we defund certain courts and go after a broader-based punishment on the jurisdiction side. We don't want to. We know we need courts. You have disputes in a free economic system like ours, but by golly, you want judges who are not going to abuse their power for political bias or animus. And people like some of the judges that are out there that are trying to stall the Trump agenda, they seem to be having this political animus. So that's where we're going to go, John and Amanda. Also, I'd say that you've got some impeachment, but I'm not hopeful on impeachment, to be frank.
Yeah, I'll give you a little inside skinny on Just the News. The #1 read story this entire week on Just the News was the story about you introducing your legislation to resolution to remove Judge Boasberg under the good behavior or bad behavior standard. People all around this country reading it. That was really one of our most important stories of the week. Sarah, as always, it's great to have you on. It's always great to listen to your podcast. We're always smarter when we spend some time with you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. You guys have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too, sir. Thank you so much. All right, folks, we got a chance to speak with the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, on my podcast yesterday. A really newsy interview, Amanda. We're going to play some parts of that when we get back. He has a lot of things to say about judicial overreach. He's starting to gain a lot of traction in the Senate. I think they're going to get legislation passed. We'll cover that right after the next commercial break. Hey folks, did you know that other seniors group, AARP, has promoted Drag Queen Story Hour events? Really, it's true. And it's just one example of their steady shift towards a progressive political agenda. They supported Obamacare, opposed the Trump tax cuts, and they continue to align with policies that many everyday Americans simply don't agree with. That's why more and more people are turning to AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's a conservative alternative to AARP. AMAC is working hard to protect Social Security, fight for election integrity, and promote the constitutional and common sense values that matter to you and me. And it's not just for seniors. Anyone can join regardless of age. Right now, AMAC is offering an exclusive deal, a 5-year membership. That's what I am. I've joined for 5 years for just $31. That's 47% off the regular rate of $60. But this special offer ends April 30th. So hurry up, go check it out. Your dues don't go to woke causes. They go towards supporting AMAC's advocacy work in Washington and across the country. To learn more and join today, visit amac.us/justnews. That's AMAC, AMAC.us/justnews. All right, folks, earlier yesterday, I had the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Chuck Grassley, on my podcast. He's one of the longest-serving members in the history of the Senate. He's also one of its most important when it comes to whistleblowers, FBI oversight, in judicial nominations, judicial reform. He is the number one honcho in Congress, now the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He talked about his plans for reining in activist judges. Have a listen. It's a really fun discussion. You have made a lot of things clear in the last few days with your great work in the oversight of the Senate Judiciary Committee, beginning a very important process of reining in federal judges who are activists, who are now asserting their authority nationwide, even though their district is geographically limited. Tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do and what the problem is that has gotten out of control.
Well, we have one of 600 plus judges, and now it probably adds up to about 35 different judges putting national injunctions on. And normally a case before a judge ought to apply just to that district and just to the people that are before the court. And he makes his decision based on that.
Right.
It has no influence outside of that individuals or that district. Now, when a national injunction is put in place, it affects all the other 92 district, federal district courts, I should say court districts, throughout the country. It becomes national. So you have a judge making national policy when he says, for instance, like one judge did, that President Trump can't freeze $2 billion of aid someplace, and you got to spend it in 36 hours. Well, just think how ridiculous that is. This could be appealed, and it could be overturned. The money's already spent. Locking the barn door, lock the horse out. Yeah. So we want to limit what the judge can do to that district and to the people before it. And the second thing is, we want it to be appealable very quickly, so if the judge screws up constitutionally, we can do something about it.
Yeah, those are two big things. You know, you played a role for many, many years of reviewing judges and getting them on the bench, and I've marveled watching that process. It seems in the last few years, particularly during the Obama and Biden years, we got a different type of judge, maybe someone who never had been on the bench and their first time is the federal bench, or somebody who comes out of the academic political activist world. Has there been a little bit of a change in the sort of candidates, particularly that Democrat presidents have recruited for the bench?
Well, sure. Activists, you could call them. You could call them people that believe in an evolving Constitution. In other words, it can change day to day, whereas the other approach is to interpret the Constitution according to original intent. And it's just like the Bible is with the Christian religion. What God said is final, and what the Constitution writers said is final ought to be the way judges decide. Or in the case of interpreting a law as opposed to the Constitution, follow congressional intent. Leave your own personal views out of it, and make sure you interpret the statute in a very strict way.
Yeah, and it is amazing how expansive some of these interpretations have become. Over the last few months, we've been doing some work on local judges who take free junkets. They go, someone takes them to a free place like Idaho in the summer or a warm place in the winter, and they're surrounded by activists, political activists. In the case of Judge Boasberg, the judge who imposed the injunction nationwide against deporting criminal illegal alien gang members, he went to one where a lot of pro-immigration, anti-Trump forces, whether they were donors, the faculty teaching there. Is it time to think about ending free junkets for judges so that there isn't that special interest backdoor to them?
Well, yes, and that's what my legislation is trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
If I understood your question right, universal injunctions put unnecessary stress on the courts and politicize the courts, and we need a long-term solution to this problem because this is relatively new happening with national injunctions, because they were very not used at all the first 175 years of our country, and they've only become dominant in the last maybe 15, 20 years. And by the way, this shouldn't be a partisan issue as well, because Democrats in the Biden administration were condemning judges that were putting national injunctions in, and we need to make sure that hopefully this becomes a bipartisan issue. I don't know that it will, but it ought to.
You have a tremendous record of working with Democrats when it comes to common sense things. You obviously probably have talked to some of your colleagues about this on both sides of the aisle. Do Democrats realize, all right, they understand right now this is about Trump, but long term, the same system could be turned on them? Do you think there'll be some bipartisan engagement to get something that's bigger than just the current political interest of the party?
Don't have any reason to believe in personal discussions at this point. But I do point out in some of my writings on this that in the Biden administration, 243 Democrats, that's House and Senate, had sent a letter or had made a press release or statements, the extent to which it was being abused by judges during the Biden administration. And I just think now that I remember that was an amicus brief that they filed.
That's right. Well, they're on record. Maybe that'll draw them in. We'll see what happens. It's amazing. I marvel at your oversight work, and there was a recent development that directly confirmed the work you did. You were worried about young children that came across the border without their parents, unaccompanied minors, being lost by the United States government. The Biden administration brings them into the most vulnerable of children because they don't come with parents. They're just shepherded in to run up the numbers for new people in the country. And the United States government, HHS, DHS, lost track of them. You first were the first senator to really jump on this, highlight this, try to get some protection for these children. The Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security confirmed your findings. I think at 200,000 that they're certain of, the United States government lost track of. First, your thoughts on getting, making sure you can get it confirmed, but also the fact that so many children were put in danger.
Oh, yes, without a doubt. And 200,000, we have we've had a figure of 326,000 sometimes. I don't know how far back that goes, but the Biden administration was supposed to be taking tests of everybody that came in DNA, and they quit doing that. Only on about 25% of the cases did they do it. And this or Department of Homeland Security OIG report confirmed my oversight of the minors program was practically non-existent. In fact, we have some evidence with a fired whistleblower that reported that they were sending some unaccompanied children to a family that had a connection with the MS-13, just
goodness.
as one example. And that was in Ohio. And when she exposed that, she lost her job.
Yeah, amazing. It's just those whistleblowers were so poignant. I remember we covered them here, and it was just jaw-dropping. A couple quick things, because I know you're a champion of getting the FBI fixed. You got a new FBI director. You had a lot of oversight letters that the last FBI director just didn't bother to answer. A good opportunity in the near future, perhaps, to get some of that oversight completed and get the real facts for the American people.
Well, Kash Patel said that he was going to make sure I got my letters answered. It's moving a little slower than I was hoping it would, but I pray that he'll do it. And I also hope if you get a chance to I'm sure you talk to the president sometime, if you ever get a chance, because this is he's way above the level of what I'm talking about, but he can bring things to happen very quickly. And we've got several, I don't know how many dozen whistleblowers we have that we're trying to get their whistleblower security clearances back so we can get them their job back. And so this is kind of how I look at it. If they were good public servants before they became official whistleblowers, and they didn't do anything wrong that we might not know about, then they ought to have their job back yesterday. And if this administration can fire people, they can rehire them and help the whistleblowers too. They did it very well with the IRS whistleblowers, but that's only two people of dozens of whistleblowers that I'm trying to help get their job back. And most of these whistleblowers were pointing out things that were wrong in the Biden administration.
That's right.
And if they were pointing out things wrong in the Biden administration, these are patriotic people that indirectly were helping the president get elected.
Sir, it's such an honor to have you on the show. We watch you work every day, and we take great inspiration in your great efforts. Thanks for joining us today, sir.
I'll be glad to be with you anytime you want me, John.
That means a lot, sir. Thank you so much. What a great interview and a very impassioned plea to President Trump to rehire the FBI whistleblowers who blew the whistle on all the different things that were going on in the Biden Justice Department. I'm sure President Trump will be hearing about that soon. We'll see what happens. All right, folks, if you liked that discussion, you can always go check out the John Solomon Reports podcast. It's wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, iHeart, Apple, all the great locations. All right.
Podcast.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to the mother who lost her son to fentanyl and how she's trying to stop that from ever happening again in America. That's going to be next, but after these messages.
Like most teenagers, Weston wanted to fit in. And in a moment of peer pressure, he tried something that someone gave to him, and it took my baby's life. We did everything right. I had those conversations with him, and fentanyl still found my son. And on February 27th, 2022, our lives were shattered, and our baby was gone. This was not an overdose, it was a poisoning.
What you just heard was just a short bit of Ann Fundner's story. Her son Weston passed away after taking a fentanyl-laced pill that was trafficked across what was essentially an open border during President Biden's term. And now Anne has become an advocate for the fight against fentanyl, and she joins us now. Anne, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for telling your son's story and being relentless in this effort.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You know, I'm so glad that we played that piece of your clip, because I think it's so important to emphasize to parents, because, you know, a lot of parents, they have the talk with their kids. They feel like they, you know, they monitor the things that they need to. They keep an eye on their kids' friends groups and things like that. And your story just really highlighted that you can do all the things right, but if you are in if you are in a culture and an environment where opioids and fentanyl can just flush into this country, then you're really fighting an uphill battle.
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing that I tell parents. Please talk to your kids about peer pressure. Yes, it's important to educate them on drugs. The biggest thing is that parents don't think this is going to happen to them, and I assure you it could happen. If it could happen to me, it could happen to you. Talk to them about peer pressure. Please role play with your kids. Run scenarios. You know, give them taglines to say, you know, I'm good. You know, I'm not interested. Give them the taglines to say to walk away, because it's better that they're alive tomorrow than to you know, try to fit in that night. Yeah. Because 7 out of 10 pills are deadly.
Yeah, they sure are. And just 30 seconds of peer pressure can create that deadly moment. It's so remarkable. When we were last together, Anne, I think it was at the special here with all the families. It was such a powerful night. Then Joe Biden was in charge. The scourge was just raging. What progress have we made in the last year, last 3 months, 4 months? Do you see some progress being made?
Oh, yeah. It's night and day between the two administrations in the past year. There was much different. I know this I think it was the CDC put out provisional, what they called it, numbers, that fentanyl had somehow gone down. Provisional means there's no difference. There was nothing that they put in place that would have made those numbers go down 50 times more addictive than crack. If nothing is put in place to make those numbers go down, then there's absolutely no reason why those numbers would have gone down. So I don't buy those numbers from the provisional CDC. As soon as President Trump was elected, we started to see people get scared, pull back, and I believe now we are at 98% less border crossings. You know, the cartels foreign terrorist organizations. We have labeled Attorney General Pam Bondi just labeled fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, which was huge because it is a poison. You just had Senator Chuck Grassley on. He just had the I believe that's what the name of it was called. Act just went through, and that was huge because it's on the de minimis loophole. I believe there's going to be a lot more done. We're working on criminalization, everything. The tariffs were 20. I'll tell you, that was a really incredible move because we have a president, and that's what the difference is. He cares about people. He cares about us. He cares about the families, and he really, truly has a lot of compassion for the angel moms and dads.
He really does.
He does. It's true. It's personal.
And it's obviously important to stop the flow of illegal immigration and drugs coming across our border. But lest we forget that there are already drugs here that are being passed around and even not yet sold, sitting in warehouses. What would you like to see happen to make sure that those perpetrators, the drugs themselves, get seized?
Well, I mean, that's just something that I'm sure that they're working on. From, you know, the Department of Homeland Security and the Justice Department are working. I have full faith in everybody that President Trump has appointed. I do believe that we are going to begin seeing a draft. But we also have, you know, a lot of work to do ahead of us because there are stockpiles or in places that we don't know. So we need to snip them out and find them. But, you know, there's also nitazines, the isonitazines, the etonitazines, the carfentanil. They're actually lacing fentanyl with these things that are 100 times more powerful than fentanyl. It is sick. It is sick, and it's a war on American soil. So we have all the right people in place, and we're doing all the right things. I'd like to see, you know, obviously all of it get found, but it's going to take time.
Absolutely.
definitely is.
And where can people find out more about you and your son and the struggles and the efforts that you're making?
I work a lot and camera, and I use I'm very involved with Lost Voices of Fentanyl. I try to do as much as I can to just get out there. My handles are in Elizabeth US on Instagram and Twitter. But the biggest thing is I try to just get people.
Absolutely.
So important.
Awareness is the most important thing, and you are doing your part, and we are so sorry for your loss, but so grateful for the efforts that you are making. Ann Funner, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, we have a shocking story for you detailing corruption with the National Institute of Health. Surprise, surprise. Stick around.
Hey folks, let's be honest, our body lets us know, right? We're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, you need to check out our good friends at Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements designed to help with every health goal, whether it's boosting your energy, trimming belly fat, supporting healthy blood sugar, pumping your testosterone up, or even reducing swelling in your legs. Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the good old USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. You heard me right, 35% off. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use the coupon code JUSTNEWS at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there's zero risk in trying something new, so why wait? Head over to purehealthresearch.com right now. Explore their 45 amazing supplements and save 35% before this deal ends with the coupon code JUSTNEWS. Don't miss this chance to feel your best.
Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. Let's turn our attention to the National Institutes of Health. The left and the mainstream media are very upset about what the Trump administration has done so far with that agency. But our next guest says there's still a lot of corruption going on inside NIH. Joining us now to talk about it all, former NIH-funded researcher, three-time best-selling author, and CEO of Overqualified.com, Dr. Isaiah Hankel. Dr. Hankel, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to start with the problems at NIH. I know you've spoken extensively and written about how broken that agency is. Why do you say that?
There's just a lot of corruption that can't be tracked, very little oversight overall. You have people who think that they know better than all the American taxpayers, not just one or two of them. And they're making decisions to do research on things that they were never approved to do research on, at least in terms of a grant-funded way. So I think that there's been a progress here, of course, with Jay getting in as the new NIH director, Trump's appointment, but there's a long way to go. We need to remove all of the people that have made it a bureaucracy that's put really I would say, virtue signaling above logic, above science, and has had a lot of these researchers really playing God with the American taxpayers' money and doing research that should never have been done in the first place.
Yeah, it's so remarkable. You would think that in an institute called the National Institutes of Health that human safety would be forefront and foremost, but as you've exposed so brilliantly, a lot of times that takes a backseat to fame or just trying to get more money or to conflicts of interest with buddies in the industry. Describe a little bit about the lack of attention to human safety first.
I think what everybody's experienced over the last 4 or 5 years, right? Whether you want to classify them as bioweapons or what happened with COVID and the pandemic, everybody knows that people were put in a lot of danger because of research that was being done. Common sense dictated from the very beginning that this is something that leaked out of the Wuhan lab, just as an example. But you had large academic journals running cover saying, no, this is from the wet markets. They still have these articles out there that they haven't retracted. Crazy. Some of the biggest names in science. And it's all to provide this kind of cover so that they can point to, but these prestigious peer-reviewed journals said that this is still a possibility. And they want to wait 7, 8, 10 years total until they can finally say, oh, you know what? Actually, it was out of the lab. And why do they fight this so hard? Because once they admit that it was from the lab, it means that we funded, the U.S., the NIH funded, and their associated bodies, funded this kind of research that caused all of this death, everything that happened to the economy, and then people will need to be held accountable. But in this area, especially in higher education, the academic-backed research, there's very little accountability. They can be booted out of a university just to get placed at another top university. And so I think the American public, they want to see some sort of accountability here, whether that means firing people that are at these institutions that have allowed this to happen, and they'll accept the lower level firings, but I think they want to see some higher level firings too.
Yeah. In your latest article, you revealed some pretty gross numbers. A survey that you cited in the journal Nature, staggering 70% of scientists who were surveyed reported not being able to reproduce published research. How on earth is that the case?
Yeah, and this is a survey from the researchers themselves, because they know a lot of this is not reproducible. Not only can many of them not reproduce their own experiments in their own labs, they know they can't reproduce it from one lab to another. And there's a much more scientific study that's quoted in there too from Begley, talking about how these big breakthrough oncology studies that he researched that were published, about 11% of them were reproducible, which means 89% of them were not reproducible. There's no standards for reproducing. It's all a kind of Ponzi scheme. So what they do is they collect this data to get a grant, which allows them to stay in business because that's their paycheck, one way or the other, indirect or direct. And so they get this grant approved, even if they know the data is not going to go anywhere because they're the closest to it. But then they use the money they get from that grant to work on something else that's exploratory that was never approved. And on this goes. And so eventually it just goes in a direction where they're working on something like transgender mice, but nobody actually approved for it to be worked on, or certainly not in a way that was approved to be worked on. Or these beagles that are being worked on overseas right now that are funded by different organizations, including some of those in the U.S., where many of these beagle puppies are being killed, and the American taxpayer doesn't know about it. There's no oversight. There's nobody that goes in and says, hey, are you actually doing the research you're supposed to do that was outlined in the grant? There's no oversight, and nobody wants that oversight because they want to be able to do anything that they want because they think they're smarter than you, than me, than the American taxpayer.
Yeah. This has been a blinking red for at least 2 decades, maybe 3 decades. I did stuff on Anthony Fauci 2 decades ago. There have been the whistleblowers on autism studies, all sorts of different things. How do we break the cycle of failure? How do we break the cycle of cheating and corruption and fraud? What's it going to take? Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, I think, understands it, but what power can Congress and the president give to make sure we make a big difference?
I think the power goes to being able to simplify it. The reason that they're able to get away with a lot of this is because of the nomenclature, which itself is like a word that to a lot of people means nothing. They just use these big words. They obscure a lot of stuff. They're like, well, you wouldn't understand what we're actually working on here. It really is similar, on and on. So what I love about what DOGE has been doing, for example, is saying, okay, let me show you line by line on a balance sheet where this money has been going to. Let me show you that there's actually all these people that are getting Social Security checks that don't exist because nobody is 150 plus years old, right? That's the kind of clarity we need here too. Look at these insane experiments that are done that nobody wanted, right? Let's actually get an official to admit this did leak from the lab, even though everybody knows that they need somebody to say, yes, this actually happened. They've debarred one scientist from Ecolab because of this. There needs to be more of that happens, and they need to simplify the messaging to the American public. They need to show, this is how much more money you would have taken home if we didn't do these kind of experiments. Here's the people, the faces that are doing this kind of crazy research on these beagles or these mice or whatever it is. Do you want this to happen? Until there's enough pressure where there's oversight, the same way there is at any trading floor. Like we talk about, Wall Street, the SEC can go in to any trading firm at any time they want to just kind of check things out to make sure everything's being done correctly. We need that where anybody can walk into a research lab and say, what experiments were being done today? Where did this money go? And if there's not that kind of oversight, if there's not that kind of attention that the researcher needs to have of like, I better be doing this right because somebody could walk in here and take a look at what I'm doing, then it's never going to change.
Yep. You got to expect somebody looking over their shoulder. I think that will fix a lot of this great idea. Dr. Isaiah Hankel, thank you so much for being here. Everybody check out his books. He's also the CEO of Overqualified.com, the eponymous name of his book. Thanks for joining us. And all right, everybody, we're going to be back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. The New Tolerance campaign has added the growing anti-Tesla protest to its hate map tracker, raising red flags about what it calls a coordinated effort to demonize Elon Musk for his political beliefs and free speech advocacy. And the so-called Tesla takedown movement is now encouraging activists to take action at Tesla showrooms everywhere, arguing that hurting Tesla is stopping Musk and claiming that stopping Musk will help save lives and our democracy. So joining us now, the president of the New Tolerance campaign, Gregory Angelo. Gregory, great to see you.
Thanks very much for having me back.
All right, tomorrow it seems like there are going to be a lot of these protests cropping up around. What is the best message to send to them that this has got to stop?
Well, number one, it seems, thankfully, that President Trump, AG Pam Bondi, and the Justice Department are stepping up their actions, making sure that anyone that engages in, be very clear, this is political violence. Anyone who engages in political violence against Tesla showrooms, vandalizes cars, etc., is guilty of domestic terrorism. And actually, I would take it one step further than that. I mean, the unique thing we're seeing here is this is not just domestic terrorism, it's economic terrorism. It is terrorism that isn't just done to scare Tesla owners, to scare people who might be considering purchasing a Tesla. The end goal of this is actually the destruction of a major corporation. And they are using violent means in order to achieve that end. So my advice to them would be steer clear of the protests if you know what's good for you. But if you engage in political violence, there will be consequences.
Yeah, they got to be serious. Gregory, I want to ask a little bit about the organizers behind this. These are not organic protests. These are highly organized, well-funded, in fact, well-messaged protests. I think there were websites this week suggesting what sort of incendiary devices that these haters and violent protesters can use. Tell us a little bit about the corporate size structure above this that drives all of this hatred. I'm sure we saw it in BLM, the anti-Israel protests, and now here, right?
Exactly. The media would like you to think that this is all happening organically, that this is your neighbors next door that are rising up and making a political statement. And that's absolutely not the case. The origin of this whole movement was a website that listed the location of every Tesla dealership in the United States on a map. This is not something that happens organically. That gave the protesters and potential protesters actual targets. You had a parallel website that was launched in the days after that called DogeQuest that did the same thing, except it listed the phone numbers, names, and addresses of Tesla owners in the United States with a cursor that, by the way, was a Molotov cocktail. That website, after media attention, was thankfully taken down, but it reappeared on the dark web days later. But take a step back from this. You have groups like Troublemakers and Indivisible that have been providing advice to protesters, have been holding Zoom conversations with hundreds and hundreds of protesters, giving them advice. John, as you said, there's an Antifa-linked organization that isn't just talking about Molotov cocktails, but actually recommending alternatives to Molotov cocktails that protesters could consider so that they cannot be tracked back to the police using forensics. I mean, these are people who are very serious about conducting violence, but they're also extremely organized. And as you said, well-funded. Those groups I'd mentioned, Indivisible and Troublemakers, if you follow the money, you will see that organizations, leftist funding organizations like George Soros and the Tides Fund and the Tides Action Foundation are also contributors to these groups and organizations. So this is not something that is organic. It's very sophisticated and very well organized.
Yeah, we've just got about a minute left. I'm old enough to remember when groups like this used to claim to be tolerant, a part of big tolerance, like big pharma and big education, big tolerance. Yep. But with what they are doing, certainly doesn't seem tolerant. Are they still claiming to be the tolerant ones?
I mean, their actions certainly speak louder than their words. Let's also remember that Elon Musk and Tesla were darlings of the left up until really just a couple of months ago, and certainly until Elon Musk started closely affiliating himself with President Trump. It's rather ironic that every time a Tesla is burned, hundreds of toxic chemicals are released into the atmosphere.
Wow.
So much for being green, I guess.
Right. Very quickly, tell everybody where they can find out more about New Tolerance campaign.
Of course. To find out more about the New Tolerance campaign, our website, newtolerance.org. We are on X at @new_tolerance. Also, check out our hate map project at hatemap.com, or just access it through the website to get the lowdown on not just the Tesla takedown movement, but leftist political violence all across the United States.
Yeah, a lot of great resources there. And Gregory Angelo, you do a lot of great work at that organization. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this Friday evening, and that's going to do it for this week. Lots of big scoops over at, I know it, a lot of scoops over at justthenews.com, and those will be flowing forth through the weekend, so make sure you head over there to justthenews.com, and we will see you all again on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on Real America's Voice.